Hello, welcome to this session about mastering PowerShell with Azure Automation Accounts. Automation accounts are a cool tool for IT administrators to automate tasks, daily tasks or scheduled tasks or webhooks for running their code in the cloud. My name is Toni Pohl. I'm an IT consultant. I'm located in Vienna in Austria. I'm working for a company named At Work, and you can contact me with via Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle and my email address here. And of course, after the session, when we do some Q&A and at the discourse. Okay, let's start with that. I'm happy to be part of Global Azure. First, thank you to our sponsors. Without sponsors, this event wouldn't be possible, so thanks for that. Here we have Platinum and Gold sponsors who make this event possible. And we want to point out there's also an Azure Masterclass series made by the European Cloud Conference and the community as well. Okay, with that, I want to point out my last slide here. We can chat and discuss about this session, or if you have any questions right after my presentation, or you can also go to bit.ly GAB-AT-Discord to chat later as well. Good. If you have worked with PowerShell, with Azure, you know there are multiple ways how to automate tasks. So usually as an IT administrator, you want to be able to run your code on a daily basis. For example, say you have the task that you say, I want to get a report of all my active users in Microsoft 365, and I want to see how many files they have shared, or similar task where I say, okay, I need to do something with my custom scripts. There are multiple ways to do that. So for example, you can create a script, or you can code it. You can run that code on your local machine, on a server, or of course you can run this code in Azure. And there are multiple ways, as I mentioned before. So today I want to focus on Azure Automation Accounts. Other ways to automate your code, your scripts would be, for example, the no-code approach to say, I want to use Azure Logic Apps or Flow. That would be the Microsoft 365 part of it. Or I run my code in Azure Functions. Or if it's a more complex scenario, maybe we have more code, you create your own endpoint with a REST interface and host it in Azure App Services or any other system. So there are multiple ways to do it. Today, again, I want to concentrate on Azure Automation Accounts. Okay, so my next slide here just shows a kind of overview. What's the purpose of Azure Automation Accounts? So basically, they're designed to help the administrators to automate operational challenges, as it's here on the slide, to automate process automation. And it's a very low a very easy approach to use your own scripts in the cloud. And I will show you how you can do this in a demo in a second. And this is just an overview. How can you do this? Well, you have some, let's say, PowerShell script, as I have in this demo here in the slide, where I say, okay, my PowerShell script gets some parameters. Then I do something like, for example, I create a new SharePoint communication site, for example. I'm using various modules for that. I can use, of course, the Azure PowerShell modules. I can use Microsoft 365, Microsoft Graph, your own PowerShell commandlets or modules from the PowerShell gallery. So there are multiple ways how we can use these scripts. But basically, the idea is simply take your script and then move it, migrate it to the cloud. And this is what we want to dive in. When you want to manage, there are multiple ways to do that. So for example, you want to schedule your tasks. This would be a task where, say, every night or every hour, I do some synchronization between data between my on-premises system, for example. I want to create a report out of the cloud or similar tasks. Of course, you can also use these automation accounts for workflows. And I have a sample for this as well, where we integrate our automation account script into a workflow, into a logic app, for example. Of course, you can have various other tasks. And the idea here is give the users a possibility to use your custom scripts, your code, your solution within other systems. And this is a really one of the things that are very cool to do in Azure, because we can glue all these components together. So with that, let's come to my demo and let me show you how this looks like. So now to have more screen here, I switch off my camera and also end my presentation here. So that you hopefully can see my screen here. And I have already logged into Microsoft Azure. So this is my Azure demo tenant. And in this demo tenant, I have multiple services here on the left side. And one of the services is the Azure Automation Account. Just let me check here, which is this one. So on the other side, I have a directory, which is this one here. I have some sample scripts here, and I already have opened that with PowerShell, which is with Visual Studio Code. To make this a little bit more readable, let me switch the color theme to the PowerShell ISE, what PowerShell users are used to see. Sorry, I didn't press enter, so let's add this here, PowerShell ISE. And imagine you have local scripts where I say, okay, this is a script, I want to run this in the cloud. So how does this work with Azure Automation Accounts? I have a very simple output statement here. So write output hello world at get date. So I can run this here and we will see the result here. So let's take this script here and I simply copy and paste it. And now I go to the automation accounts here. And I want to create a new automation account. How does this look like? So first go to the automation account, say add, and in that blade that opens here, we can say, okay, this is the name of our global Azure account. One Azure automation account can host multiple scripts. They are called runbooks here. So let's simply call it global Azure 3 because I already have 1 and 2. This is my subscription resource group. I already have one that's called Global Azure, and the location is already in West Europe. There's one important thing I want to point out here, and this is the create Azure Run As account. And if you see, if I'm an owner of the subscription, this is by default yes. What does it mean? This means we also will provision a new Run As account, which is used by the automation accounts as a service user service principal, and your code runs under this account, which is very helpful. But on the other side, we can focus on that a little bit later to say we want to have a granular control what this account can do. So let me create that account here. This usually is done pretty fast. And when doing this, we will see I have now here 2 activities that happen. So one of them was that the global Azure deployment was successful, and the second is happening in my Azure Active Directory. You can see the Azure Run As account service principal for account Global Azure 3 was created. So actually we have done 2 steps. We have created the Azure Automation account and we have created a service principal. So how does it look like? So let's go to this resource here, and you see there's nothing special here. We are the resource group, the subscription. There are no tasks already executed here. And if I scroll down a little bit here, process automation, we will see that there's somewhere the Run As account. Here it is. So we see the account is named Azure Run As account. It expires in a year. And if I look at that, we see the details of that. So that's the display name of our Run As account. And we have also created a certificate that's used for ensuring to establishing the connection to other resources here with this thumbprint here. And we have created an application ID. And that application is an Azure Active Directory application. And there's a service principal tied to this application. So if we look here in the Azure Active Directory and go to the app registrations here, we will find that account here. So let's go to all applications, and it was called global something. We will see that this is the account that's being used by our scripts. And of course, this is a normal Azure Active Directory application with the certificate that has been created here. You can see it with the thumbprint. It doesn't have any API permissions, but this is the important part here. If I go to the subscriptions and go to my subscription here and look at the access control, we will see that in the role assignments, and if I scroll down a little bit here, we will see that this account here is contributor for the full subscription. So maybe you want to change this in your productive environment to say, okay, I run scripts, but these scripts shall not have access for the full to the full subscription. On the opposite, I want to remove that. That would be the process for that. Click here, say remove it, and then simply add that just to the resource group you want to have it. In my demo, I leave it as it is, but if I go back to my automation accounts, imagine I have removed that. I go to Global Azure 3 here. This is an empty Azure Automation account, which opens hopefully in a second. So here we go. And if I go to my access control here, of course, I can go to the role assignments and say, I add that account just for this resource group or for this automation account or for the resource group. So maybe the best approach in productive environment, go to the resource group, go to the Azure, to the access control and add your account here to the role assignments, because here you would say, okay, for that resource group, contributor, and then we have the global something 3. I think that's the name of it. Global Azure 3 and then some GUID, and add this to your resource group. So this would be the best recommendation, the best practice for ensuring that the security of your resource group is intact and works for your resource group only. Okay, now back to that. We have now created this Global Azure 3 automation account. What can I do in here? How can I put my scripts into that automation accounts? How does the handling work? So first of all, the interesting part are the so-called runbooks. And if I open that, you can see there are already 3 runbooks in here. But let me first create a new runbook here. Call it T1 for test 1, hello world, for example. And here I can select what kind of runbook type it is. Is it a PowerShell or is it a graphical script, or is it Python 2, or is it a workflow? In my case, I say it's PowerShell created, and we will see that we now get a new runbook, which is this here. And now I can go in here and simply paste my code. So this is basically how you can do it manually, to say, okay, I have a script, I simply copy and paste it into such a new runbook, and that's my T1 hello world. I can save this here, and if I want to run it, I have to publish it, but I can test it anytime without the official run, let's put it this way, because then it doesn't show up in the log. So I can go to the test pane here, and I can simply click start. And what happens now that I have queued the execution of this script T1. So now we will see sooner or later, once the virtual machine where this is executed starts, and with all the information are put to that virtual machine, we will see how this script is executed. In the meantime, let me go back. Just want to show you one slide here, which is this. Oh, here it was, but we will switch to that a little bit later. How do they work? Well, I have such an automation account. We've created that, and one automation account can contain multiple scripts, and the scripts are called runbooks. In my sample here, I have 3 runbooks, or in real world, it was called T1 hello world, runbook ABC, and we have additional data for that runbooks, for that script. So we have shared resources, like this would be modules, like, for example, module of containing the SharePoint commandlets, or module containing the Microsoft Graph PowerShell commandlets, or any other module. And we can define variables and secrets. And that's the second part. We have connectivity. We want to do something within our script. So we need to access, let's say, a service principal or a login with a password or something like this. And there's a store for that. I will show you that in the next sample. So we can use these 2 resources in our scripts. And when we execute the script, that script is deployed to a virtual machine here. Sorry. to a virtual machine and is more or less with all the necessary environment is executed there, and also all the logging is done here in the Azure Automation account. So this is how it works. And now I go back here to my hello world, and here see the output of that. Okay, so we have created our first script here. I can go to edit anytime. Now I can say publish this script. So let's do this. And this is how it looks like. If I go back to the list of all the runbooks, you will see now we have these 4 scripts here. So one of that is the hello world. I can go here and say, I want to start it. If I click the start button here, the same thing happens. The only difference is that now the job is put into a queue, and we have various modules here. So we can see, okay, there were no input parameters, no values I need to pass to that script. We have an output that's executed here. I can click refresh anytime if it's a longer script to see, okay, what was the output until now? I would see, are there some errors here or any warnings? I see the logs. Okay, currently it was executed at that time here at 9:16 a.m. And have there been any exceptions? So I have controlled what's happening during the execution here as well. Let's go back. I also can only view it, or what I just did, I edited it. And this is very interesting. I can say link to schedule to say, okay, this script here, I want to run it, let's say every day, for example. So I can create a new schedule hello world, for example, with description. Then you can see, I can say it starts, let's say today at 9:30 a.m. in my time zone, and I want to have it recurring. I want to have it run every hour, every day, something like this. Set expiration, yes, please. This shall run only till, let's say, Sunday, and create a schedule for that. And the second thing here, do I need to add parameters? No, in this script, I just say hello world, so I have no parameters and create such a schedule. And the thing here is that I now have created a timetable where this script runs. And I don't have to take care that I need to run it manually. It will happen automatically. The second part, the add webhook, we will come to that later when we use it in interaction with other services. And of course, I can delete it, I can export it, etc. What I also can do here is I don't need to create it manually. I can import a runbook. Let's go here, say select a file. If you have a script, you don't have to do it with copy and paste. So I can say go to a specific directory, and here I have A0 import hello world. That's a PowerShell script. It automatically detects that this script is a PowerShell because of the extension, and I can simply say create it. Okay, so that's the basic thing. How can I use my scripts in here? And now I can say publish this script, and now this script can be executed here as well. Good. So what are the other types of scripts we have in the Azure Automation account? So we have seen PowerShell, which is usually the way how to use these automation accounts, but we have 2 more types. I just want to show them quickly. One of them is the Azure Automation Tutorial, which is this here, and that's a graphical interface. As you see what's happening in here, you could also develop, but only in this environment, only in the Azure portal, such a graphical runbook where you can see, okay, this here consists of a README, and then we have a runners connection with a label and some command. And here are some parameters that are passed, and we log into Azure, do something, then we get all the Azure resources. And this is another way to do it. How would you do it if you do it here? As it's pre-configured, we could go here, for example, to other runbooks. We say we want to include other runbooks from this script. I say, okay, my hello world shall be part of that. So I simply say add to canvas. And here we go. So this would be my runbook. And I say, okay, after the login here, I want to execute this one here. And whatever this script does, and then with the flow, I continue somewhere else. So that would be the way how you do it here. Of course, you can also use all the commandlets that are available in the Azure Resource Manager module. So for example, you can access Azure Storage or other modules as well. Simply go to that, say, oh, okay, I need an Azure Storage here, and I want to write something to an Azure Storage. So select the commandlet and say, add it to the canvas, and then you define in the workflow where this script shall run. So here it would be, and so I can say after this, then please run this here, and I configure it with parameters. I just wanted to show you this very quickly, because this is maybe not this wouldn't be my recommendation to use, because it's getting complicated especially with maintaining. So you can do it, but in most cases you would prefer to use PowerShell scripting, because you're more flexible with that from my perspective. So let's remove that. And the other runbook we have is Python, the other runbook type. Python, you could use Python 2 here. And there's also a downside for that. So if you know Python, of course, that's a way, but this is not the latest version. So it's only Python 2. And let's see how the future of the support for Python will be in Azure Runbooks. Currently, we don't have access. I think the latest version is 3.5 or so. So we are also somehow limited here. But anyway, it's possible to do that. So what does the PowerShell tutorial script here does? That's created automatically. If I look at edit, how can I work with that? Well, this is accesses the connection, and this is using the Azure Run as connection. This is the connection we have seen before. So if I go to my assets here and to connections, and here you can see this is more or less the name of the connection I can access within the script. So this here defines the connection name. Then it says, okay, please give me a principal connection with get automation connection of that name here. And now I have the connection, the service principal connection object in my hand, and I can connect to Azure with Azure RM account. It's using the old PowerShell module for Azure Resource Manager. I have a sample for the new one then, and then we say, okay, this is the tenant ID, this is the application ID, this is the certification, the thumbprint. These are the things we saw before when we looked at the run as account. Once I'm logged in, we have a try catch. We say, okay, I have a variable. I want to get all the resource groups, and here you see a for each loop where we say, okay, simply write every resource I have in this connection. So if I publish this and run it, this will take a moment. You will see this is a kind of like inventory for Azure Automation Accounts. So let me start it. I switch to the execution blade here, and I can look at the output. And this job will run now in the background. And it would simply output the data to this output window. So we don't do anything with the data here, but we continue once this is started here. And the important thing is, since we are using the connection we saw before, we of course get the resources from the full subscription. If I would have removed the subscription, the permissions of that account here from on the subscription level, and put it only into the resource group itself, I would not see all the resources that are in my Azure 365, in my Azure subscription, to say it correctly. And here you can see, okay, we also have in that subscription a bot service, then we have other components, we have servers, we have other connections, more bot insights, web connections, and so on. So this is a kind of inventory, and it also, of course, shows me all the runbooks we have in that subscription. So this is really an inventory thing, and it shows very nicely how you can access, for example, how you can do things within Azure with that service principal, because that service principal, as we saw, is a contributor. He can access all the things. Why do you need this? Well, for example, I have another demo here, and for that I switch back to my Global Azure 1 Azure Automation Accounts. I've already imported some runbooks here. For example, you can start and stop a virtual machine, which would be that one here. I called it A4 here. If I click on edit, you see I have a resource group name, MITT, M365. I have a virtual machine name. I use the same principle. I say, okay, I want to use that connection here. I log into that connection, and then I say, please start this virtual machine. And for that, I need to have the permissions. So if I duplicate that browser here and go to my virtual machines, I think I have one somewhere here. That should be exactly that one here, the MITT virtual machine 1. And this is currently stopped and deallocated. So if I go back to my script here, and say, okay, I want to run this, start it, yes. I now started that script here, and what this script does, it will now try to start this machine, and for that it needs to have the permission to do so because it's within our Azure subscription. So we will see that in a moment. In the meantime, let's have a look here to my other Azure Automation account, which is somewhere here. I think we just stopped. Yeah, we already saw the output we just created in the Global Azure 3 account here. So let's have a look at the other scripts. Go to the runbooks. And what else can we do? So while we try to start this virtual machine here, I have created another script, how you can access assets, as it's called in here. So these assets help. These are the shared configuration things you can access here. So you can also define variables, as I did here with some text 1, some text 2, and for example, the tenant name. If you want to use these things on a, let's say, Azure Automation account level, you can simply put it into that configuration. So here you can see I say write output, hello name, and then I say get automation variable some text. This is exactly the name of this here. So I could also click here and say get variable, then you get the command for that. This is how you would access, and this is a thing you would need to change to say, okay, I don't hard code user credentials in my PowerShell script, which you never should do. Instead of I put that information into a central storage, and we put it somewhere in the runbook, which is, I go down here a little bit here. So first of all, I have created variables. This is some text 1, some text 2, add a variable, and I can add another one, global Azure 3, for example, and then I define, okay, this is a PowerShell variable of type string, date time, blah, blah, blah. So this is the Friday, something like this. And now I've created a variable and I can access these data in my script. We'll see in a minute. I also added the tenant name here. And the good thing, I can also add credentials here. And I already added 2 credentials because my PowerShell script shall then later, for example, provision a new team or provision a new SharePoint site. For that, they need to have access to that tenant, and I need to store the credentials somewhere. And that's the same principle. If I add a new credential here, I can give it a name here and say, okay, that's my username, that's my password, that's my admin, and that's my password 1234, 1234, something. Now you know my password, and you can say create that credential here. And the credentials, if you look at Nestor, for example, you can see there are not shown here, so you have to add them. You have to know the data here, but this is the way how to store these global information, that global data is credentials, certificates, variables here on the level of the automation account. So if I now go back to my runbooks and go back to my A2 variables here, that's in edit, and I run this here, we have seen how to access it. So here we say get automation account some text, get automation account some text 2 here, and run it. Go to that, start it. We will see once this script is executed that the output will then show the content of these variables here. So this will happen in a second. In the meantime, let's have a look if our machine is already started. So this would be the output of our start to stop virtual machine. It says long running, blah, 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 started that machine here. So let's see if our script here worked. Here are the virtual machines. And this is the machine I was targeting. And you can see now the status here is running. Wonderful. So our script to start it worked. And again, we need to have access to that resource. And this is how it is out of the box. I have access to all the resources in this subscription here. Okay, we no longer need that. In the meantime, our other script A2 variables, you can see in some text 1 there's John Doe, and in some text 2 there's Johnny Secret. And just to point that out here, our variable 2, you can also add a variable and say I want to encrypt it. This is the encrypted switch. So if I go to some variable 2, some text 2, you can see unknown, it's encrypted. This is how you hide secrets from colleagues, for example, credential information, connection strings, or something like this. Of course, you can also put it in here as well. So there are multiple ways to do it, but you see the idea is it's very easy to access that data here within the Azure Automation account. Okay. Of course, you can also publish your scripts with source repositories. That's also possible. So again, we have the source control here. How can I get my scripts into the Azure Automation accounts? You can connect to a source control system like Git or DevOps or similar and say, I want to automatically deploy my data. So you don't have to do it with copy and paste as I did. So I have the scripts here, what I've already imported. So this was this hello world here. Variables, I just want to point out how it works with parameters. So that's the second thing. Go up a little bit to my runbooks and go to my A2 again. And I already have it prepared in here. If you need parameters, so let's do it in the same way as we would do it in our normal world. So maybe start with that after that. And I publish this. How is the behavior for that? So let's start it. And this is what happens now. It says, okay, you have to add some parameters. I already put in a default like Toni and at work, for example. So I can say my real name is Toni and my company is Contoso, and then run the script. So I simply put some information in that my script. You can see now it is in the input these two parameters. If I go to output, of course, we will see these two parameters. So this is how you handle parameters. It's exactly the same way how we would do it in our on-premises system, in our local system. So while this runs here, this is that script. The next thing is storage. So we have seen we can output things easily, but how do I continue to work with data that's produced within my script? So for example, in the storage, I can put information into an Azure storage. That's very easy. And this is a sample how to do that. So I have a resource group. In my case, it's called Global Azure, and I have a storage account name, Global Azure 1. I could put that into a variable as well, for example. And then you see how I can connect to that. So in that case, I use the connect Azure AZ accounts. For that, I need to import the Azure AZ module. How do I do that in the Runbook? So let's go back here and go here. We see now in the meantime the output, Toni Contoso, and then the data from the variables. Of course, you can also use Azure Key Vault for storing your credentials. That would be the benefit of that would be that you can access the data from multiple services like automation accounts, Azure Functions, app services, etc. So that's of course also possible to use that. So let's go to my runbooks and go to the modules. So what modules do I have here in this Azure Runbook? I switched to my Global Azure 1 Runbook. So let's have a look here, modules. And you can see there are already some available and some imported. Please note, for example, I have AZ accounts here and AZ storage, and then I have all the other, let's say old PowerShell modules, Azure Automation, and look at the version here, please. So of AZ accounts, I have 1.7.5 of Azure storage, and let's say Azure RM Automation, I have 6.1.1. If I look to my newly created Global Azure account, to that one, Global Azure 3 here, and I have a look what kind of modules I can use here, you will see it looks a little bit different. So first of all, I don't have the Azure AZ module, and you see I have a different version of the Azure RM Automation account module, for example. And that's a big important thing which I want to give away now. You have to ensure that you work with the latest version of the modules. If you don't have a module, you can edit easily. Simply go to the modules gallery and say, oh no, I want to use the AZ modules, the new ones. So simply search for that. Then you see them from the gallery here. And then you say, oh, okay, yeah, I want to use that. And then you can see some dependencies. And then you can say, I want to use this module here in my own script. So you would simply click import. And then when it says, oh, it has dependencies, you have to look, okay, what do I need for importing this here? So I can go back here to my gallery and say, okay, first I need the set accounts, for example. I import it, this should work. It doesn't have any dependencies. That would be one of my first module. And now it's imported and it's available. So if I go back now to my modules which are available, we should see the set accounts in here. Maybe it takes a second to update the version here. It will show up in the next minute or so. So how do I update the existing modules that are available in this list here? So there's a very nice feature that's called update modules. Okay, so if you click on that, you will see, okay, this has been deprecated. So what you do now? Well, Microsoft said, maybe you want to do the update on a regular basis of all the modules and not manually. So we no longer support the update modules button here, but we have a different approach here. So we can go to the GitHub repository, which is linked here. And in this GitHub repository, Azure Automation Accounts modules update, you see there's one large script, which is this one here, the update automation Azure modules, blah, 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 3 months ago. And this is what the script does. So it's a relatively long script. So what you usually would do, you would go to the code here, simply copy that one, go back to the modules, create a new module, say, don't want to, well, sorry, I didn't want to do that. Create a new runbook. So go in here. Because I just copied the script, create it, I call it update modules. Runbook type is PowerShell, create it. And as a script code, I simply paste that code I copied from GitHub, because this here more or less does the update here. So let's publish this here. You don't need to, of course, you can analyze it, but usually we just want to run it. And this is how it looks like. You have to put in what do you want to update within that automation account. I want to update the resource group Global Azure, which is this one. That's my account name. We saw that before. And the important thing here, if you don't specify by default, it updates the Azure RM modules. If you would want to update a set, you would simply put in the module name. So I simply leave it as it is. I say I want to update Azure RM. And now this will run here. And this will automatically update. And the benefit here is, as we saw it with the A1 script before, you can schedule this and say, okay, I want to run this, let's say, every week or so to ensure that you have the latest version of the PowerShell modules. And what's happening in the background, if I scroll up a little bit in the runbooks and go to my modules here as well, while this is running, you will see that in future, these versions here of the Azure RM modules will be updated to the latest version. And again, have a look here. This is all version 1. If I go to my other automation account where I already did this in Azure Module 1, Global Azure 1 modules, we will see that here we have the Azure RM version 6, version 5.9, and so on. So this is really a recommendation to do this to ensure that you're working with the latest versions of the modules. Of course, you can upload your own PowerShell commandlets as well. So for example, in our company, we have also created our own modules. You can import them. And what I also want to point out, we also have Runbooks gallery here, where you can search for existing scripts, like, for example, stop start Azure VM. Here you can say, I'm interested only in PowerShell scripts and publish on Microsoft or the community. And then I search for something specific, like what do I have? What ready-to-use scripts do I have in here? So Azure inventory using PowerShell, or many scripts here, just to show how this looks like automatically scaling Azure SQL databases, backup databases to blob storage. How would this look like? Then you really see the code here. You can look at that, and then you can say import it, and then you use that script in your own runbook, and then you can start adapting it. So that's a very cool environment, a very cool framework we have in here to say, okay, I want to consume existing knowledge, existing script easily, and it's built into Azure here. Okay, with that, let's have a look what I want to show you. working with webhooks, for example, would be a nice one. So let me go back to my global Azure here and go to the runbooks and see what else we can do here. So we've seen how we can import modules, and I've already imported a module that's called SharePoint modules, I think, SPO or something. Or is it called SharePoint? So I've imported Microsoft Teams, for example, and somewhere there's Microsoft SharePoint, Microsoft Online SharePoint, this one here, Microsoft Online SharePoint PowerShell. So I can now use these modules in my own scripts. So this is what I did here in this wonderful script here, A5, create a communication site. So imagine you have a scenario in your organization where you say, okay, my IT department forbids that users create new SharePoint sites, because they have a policy for that, but I want to enable them a way how they can create a new SharePoint site or a new team or something like this. So how can we do it? We can integrate such a command via such a script, what I've written here, into a workflow. So here I say, okay, I have a PowerShell script, and this here creates a new communication site, and I need to have some some parameters. So I have the name of the SharePoint site, I define a quota, and who is the owner of that. And this is what I really do here. So first of all, I need the tenant name for that PowerShell module. So I get it from the tenant name variable, and I have credentials. I say, okay, this here runs under the credentials of Nestor Wilke. We have seen him before when we looked at the credentials. So I get these credentials and I connect to my tenant here, tenant admin SharePoint with these credentials. And I say, okay, please, I need to create that site here. That would be Global Azure 10, for example. Create that site here with the template SD3. This person is the owner. This is the URL, and this is the storage quota in gigabyte. And after I've done that, I also want to set some more information. Who is the owner? How is the sharing of this SharePoint site? And then I'm done. So if I run this here, I say the title will be Global Azure 30. To ensure that it's not already existing, the quota shall be 3 gigabyte, and I do not want to change the default owner, that's me, and run this script. So in the best case, when the script runs, it will create a SharePoint site in the background for me. So I already opened the SharePoint Admin Center here, go to the active sites and see how it's going here. So you can see I tested it already, Global Azure 26, 27, blah, 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 and some teams I have provisioned. And I used always an automation account as script for doing that here. So in the best case, if the script runs, we will get a new SharePoint site, and so let it run here. In the meantime, let's have a look at the webhooks here. So what is if you want to integrate it into a workflow? And I've done this here as well. So you can go to a script, go to the webhooks here at webhook, and you can see, or maybe show it to you in another one. So this one here, create a webhook for the A5 script at webhook. I can create a new webhook. So I say I want to use it from somewhere else, from outside. E5 webhook, for example, this is enabled, this expires in a day, and this would be the URL. So let me copy that and just paste it. So now I can use any other tool like Postman or a Logic app or curl or PowerShell or something to call that webhook with that token. Important if I say now, okay, I never get this URL again because there's this token in here, and this token is valid only for this automation account and only for the time I've specified. So if I click OK, this URL is gone, the token is gone, and never get it again. And then I would say, okay, I have parameters. I want to configure them if I run it directly. So this is how you would run or create such a webhook, and I did this here already. And I think the webhooks are here on the left side. You can see this is the webhook I created for this script here. And I can now consume that from a SharePoint site. But for that, let me show you how I've integrated in the workflow, outlookoffice.com. I'm currently the administrator user and that tenant here. And if I go to my inbox and I need another thing here, I have a logic app that takes care, and I have a SharePoint site. So just as my last sample here, open in a new tab. Go to my SharePoint sites. Okay, obviously it takes a moment to load that. So I have Outlook open, which is good. And I go to my logic apps. Let me show in the meantime, while SharePoint opens, what I did here. So I created a new logic app, and the name was, I think, something like Global. Or similar. It was approval ComSite. So this was the right logic app. What did I do here? I said, I want to integrate my automation account with the webhook in a flow. And the flow, you will see it in a moment, when an item is created. So I use a SharePoint site. In that case, the name was Sites Ignite. So let's see if it's already open. No. I should have it here. So here's my Ignite site. Let's go to that, Sites Ignite. Open it, and here I have, let's switch back, a list that's called ComSites, that one. So I check this, I pull it, I pull the information every 30 seconds. Is there something new in here? So this was this site here. So here's my list, ComSites. And I've used a small Power App to make it a little bit more appealing here to say, I want to provision a new site. Let's call it Global Azure 40, and my quote on gigabyte is 5. Okay, and I see, okay, my manager needs to approve this request. So I simply create that new record here in SharePoint, Global Azure 40, for example. So if I go back to my logic app, what's happening after that? We send an approval email. In my case, it's hard-coded. Just wanted to show the principle to the administrator here. And let's see if it's already running, because then it's a little bit nicer to show here. So here it is. It started right now. Let's have a look what's happening here in the logic app. I should be currently at the step that I've sent an approval email to the administrator. So let's check that. Go to the mail here, and we should see approval request for Global Azure 40. So now my manager, in my case, that's the administrator, needs to approve that. Okay, let's go back to our logic app. It should continue here. We see, okay, was it approved? Yes, it was approved. Okay, now is my condition. If this is true, then stop that, sorry. So if it's approved, we see that we call our webhook, and this is an HTTP post request where I say, okay, this is the URL of the webhook with the token, and I pass the data from the SharePoint site. That's the owner, that's the quota 5, and that's Global Azure 40. And we get back a 202, which says, okay, this worked. So if I look back to my logic apps here, it was this one here. And I look at the jobs here, we should see that this here is currently running. So the script that provisions a SharePoint site, and it's the same script as A5, just with the webhook and the data in it, does currently something. That's very good to see. So if I go back to my SharePoint sites, it was called Global Azure 40 or something like this. Let's see if it's already here. So here it is. You can see our script worked, and the owner here is a Martina administrator. So if I click on that, we should see now the SharePoint site that has been provisioned by our automation account. So this worked perfectly. I also added some other permissions here. Maybe this takes another minute or so. If I look at the site permissions, okay, who are the owners? Okay, this obviously takes a moment. And I also set the sharing in that script. But this is worked perfectly, and our logic app should be completed by now and sent also an email back to the person who wanted to create that site and said, congrats, your new communication site, Azure Global 40, with the quota 5 will be ready, and you're the owner of that new communication site. So this is how you can integrate such custom scripts within your environment. And this is a very powerful and very cool thing where you simply take your PowerShell, put it into an automation account, integrate it into a workflow, and then you can consume it out of the box with your own rules, how you define the workflow to work. So I think this is a really cool stuff here. Okay, with that, yeah, if something happens in, this is my last part, something happens here in the automation accounts, maybe an error or so, like for example, you have a syntax error or a script does not finish or something. So if I run this here, I have get automation, and then the rest of the command is missing. So I run this here, I will produce an error. So this output here, once it runs, will show that something with the script went wrong. Maybe it's a syntactic error, or something others happened, or the script doesn't finish. So how do I see this? Well, one thing, if you run it interactively, as I do, it will show up sooner or later here in the errors or in the warnings, and you can see the logs here. But how do you know that something happened what happened 1 week ago? Or if you want to say, I want to get a notification if something happens and my script doesn't finish. So that's also important here. So let's see if this, yeah, here we see this one error here. Okay, this one get automation is not recognized, for example. So this was caught here. How can I consume or store this information? Well, I can do it easily here in the settings. I go to the diagnostic settings and attach a log analytics workspace. And you can see I already did it here with Global Azure One Diagnostics. So I can go to that workspace and I can define my own queries. I can use the Custo query language. So let's go to the logs here. That's attached to my Global Azure One and maybe some other accounts. And then you can see all the data in here, the log management. And I have prepared some queries in my Query Explorer just to show the relevant one. If I go to the Save Queries, I've created a category info Azure Diagnostics. So show me everything that happened in Microsoft Automation. And we should see now, I increased this a little bit here, that we get a result here, which is not so good to see with that resolution, but we see at least one thing here. Here on you see one line, something happened here. Maybe I make this a little bit smaller here, just to give you the impression how this looks like. So this would be the one line here, and here I can say, okay, the Azure Automation account A3 storage, for example, that runbook did run and it didn't produce any error, and so on. So again, if I go in here, what's interesting, show me all the errors that happened. For example, runbook errors, that would be the same thing. Azure Diagnostics where resource provider equals Microsoft Automation, and categories job streams, and stream type is error, order by time generated, for example. So then I will see all the scripts that produced an error here. So let's see, for example, we have a new team channel, something where I tried to create a new team, for example, and I said the group ID, it didn't work because the group ID was null, it was an error, and so on. So you can work with that very, very nicely here in the log analytics workspace. And if you say, okay, I'm interested in one specific error here, so I also have a query for that summarizes all the errors. Okay, what's happening in here? Where resource providers summarize, aggregate, count by. What are the scripts that produce the most errors? Oh, see, there's one script with this job ID that produced 6 errors in the last day or so, depending if I specify the time range as well. So I simply copy that here, that job ID, go to my Save Query, say, okay, I'm interested in this one job here, and I simply say I want to filter for this specific job here. To get, we produced 6 errors here. Now I should get the 6 lines here. What happened in here with my script? Okay. So my last thing here, you can create alert rules, and I did it here already. So if you say, okay, this is interesting, I want to get an alert via email, for example, simply click on that new alert rule and create a rule for that. And you can see the resources to Global Azure. We have the script here. We can define the condition where say, okay, this will happen 1 time or 5 times or something like this. So this would be my query here. number of results. If this happens more often than 2 times within the last, let's say, 30 minutes or so, and check every 30 minutes, then please create an alert, and I can create a new one, or I already have defined an action group. It's called email. Send me an email for that. And then you define that and save that. So this is how you can react to events that happen in the automation accounts by using such a log analytics workspace. And now I increase it back to my 100% so that you hopefully can read it. If I look at the alerts here in that diagnostic, you will see I already have, or I should have had, some events here in the past 7 days. Not here, but maybe somewhere else. So I already collected some, and I did send some emails, and this is why I opened my email here. So for example, you can see currently I've just got an alert from this notification system which said severity 1 Azure Monitor Alert Runbooks on blah, blah, blah. And then you can see, okay, there was one error here, and it was, and if I scroll down a little bit, I will see, okay, this happened in A7 produce error. This was the error I just produced, and I can look at that and see, okay, what happened. And the benefit here is you can configure that very granularly. Okay, with that, I think I'm out of time now. Just want to point out one last thing here. What does it cost if you use Azure Automation Accounts? Well, you get 500 free minutes per month out of your Azure subscription, and then every minute costs is 0.2 cents. So actually it's very cheap, especially when your script doesn't run very often. Summary for my session here: plan your scripts, try it out in a demo tenant, as I did here within this session here. Learn what the benefits when using these various Azure services like log analytics, like monitoring, etc. Service the solution. You can use your source repository, of course. I have also integrated some links here that are interesting if you want to try it out, if you want to play around with Azure Automation Accounts. For example, if you want to integrate it in your Visual Studio Code, there's an extension for that, and there's a very cool description how you can configure it to make a continuous delivery from your Visual Studio Code to Azure Automation Accounts. It works more or less similar as when working with Azure Functions, but you have to create an application Azure Active Directory and put it into the configuration of the code extension. With that, I'm finished with my session. I want to point out one last thing here. What you have seen, and this presentation here is available on my GitHub. So if you simply scan that code here or go back to github.com, Toni Pohl, that's where you find this data here, or these samples and my presentation, and you find it here in Global Azure 2020. Okay. I hope this session was useful for you. I will now check the chat window here if there's some questions arise. I will stay in this chat for some more minutes. Otherwise, simply please go to the Discord server, and I will now have a look at the questions that arise during the session. So one of the questions was, is it possible to call PowerShell script written in a Runbook file from Azure Pipeline as a job? Yes, absolutely. It is possible to call a PowerShell script Runbook. You can also integrate it in other methods. For example, in the monitoring, when I send an email, instead of that, I could run a script that takes that data, that error message, for example, and puts it into another system or so. So that's absolutely possible. Oh, there's a nice one. As always, great session. Do you know if there will be a recording to share with colleagues later on? So I'm not sure. I think I have to ask my colleagues here. I think this session is recorded, but we can clarify afterwards. Okay, another question by Simon was, if all goes as planned and with consent of the speakers, session recording will be published. Okay, that's the answer. Great. Thanks, Simon. Cool. Helmut asked, is it possible to use version control such as Git and deploy the scripts to Azure Automation Accounts? Yes, absolutely. That would be the source code integration I showed very quickly. And Helmut asked, you've shown to access variables and credentials from your runbooks. Can you also access Key Vault from your runbooks? Yes, of course you can. I didn't have a sample for that, but you can use it absolutely. Can you import a specific version of a module? That's a good one. I think, well, you could do it definitely by importing it yourself. So if you say, I have, for example, my own PowerShell module written, and I have multiple versions of that, or simply download it and import only the version you have on your machine. So you can import it upload from your machine as well to ensure you have that specific version. If you use the update module script, of course, it would take the latest version of the existing modules. Okay, execute runbooks from Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio plugin or something available. Yes, you can do it with Visual Studio Code. Definitely with Visual Studio itself, I think it's possible. I have not tried it, but with Visual Studio Code, definitely with the extension. So I think there's extensions. There is Azure Automation. I think I have it installed on my machine, but not in this environment. Here, this is how you would integrate it here, and you have to read this one because you have to create that application, that service principal, to access the resource, the automation resource. Okay, what are the advantages of automation accounts over Azure Functions Logic Apps? That's a cool one. From my perspective, Azure Functions are the best. Did I say that loud? Well, Azure Automation Accounts are especially useful, from my perspective, for IT administrators who have existing scripts and want to run them in the cloud easily. So you don't have to take care of consumption plan in Azure Functions, which 5 minutes or maximum 10 minutes, or create durable functions in PowerShell script. Now with Azure Functions 3.0, that's possible, but a lot of effort. So to make it short, I think Azure Automation is the step into automation with PowerShell scripts into Azure. It helps, I think, for most of the IT administrators, and it's not as, well, let's say, you don't need to be a developer to do it. It's very easy to run your scripts in Azure Automation Accounts. Actually, I could switch on my camera again, and I'm almost done here with the questions. So a local cloud storage is required for automatically created like a workspace. A local cloud storage, you don't, well, the Azure Automation Account, of course, creates a cloud storage where the scripts are stored. You don't have to do it manually. I did it here. So for example, my script, I used my Storage Explorer, connected to that one, and created, for example, log files with PowerShells. So you can access that storage account. You don't have to do it yourself. It's done automatically. Of course, you can integrate your own cloud storage as well, if I understand that correctly. Can you share any of your runbooks? Yes, I did on my GitHub repository. And Marcus asked, you mentioned that you wanted to show 2 different ways to authenticate to Azure, old and new method. Have I missed that? Well, I'm not sure what I really said here. Actually, the authentication to Azure works with the built-in service principal. So of course you can create your own credentials and use them, as I did, for example, in my sample. So I went to my credentials here, and I added other credentials as well. I'm not sure if that's really the answer to that question, but use the built-in service principal, or use your own credentials, or of course, what I usually do, I create an application and run in an app context, because then you have absolute control what this application does. You could also use that. So for example, for provisioning a new team or so, you don't need to put in the credentials. Of course, that's the easiest way to do it. But you could also use an application and then use Microsoft Graph PowerShell or the Graph API, for example. So this is what I usually do. So there are multiple ways to do that, but it's absolutely possible to access Azure resources from different approaches, from different authentication methods. So you can decide if you do it application-wise or delegated-wise. It really depends on the scenario from my perspective. Okay, as far as I see, these are all the questions. So I hope it was useful. I hope I could answer most of them. Otherwise, please continue the chat on the Discourse server. And I wish you a great rest of the day and have fun with the rest of the session at Global Azure Bootcamp 2020. Thanks again, and hope to see and to read you later. Thank you. Bye.